Okay, I'm back for the Carb installation assembly video. I've already put in the jet, the 110 jet in the bottom of here. Just 4 screws, pulled off this bowl, put this adjustable wrench underneath the stem, and then a little flathead screwdriver I used, this one, to unscrew the 100 jet that came stock in here, and I replaced it with a 110, made it nice and snug, screwed these back together. That's really all I did on the inside of this Carb, and it was easy as pie. So let's get started here, and let's do the simplest thing first, and that would be threading this, and I can make this in 2 parts here. But I'm just going to put this nubbin, this little dust cover here, over that. And now I can slip this screw cap through the throttle cable here. And hopefully that I can get that all the way through there. And it's kind of giving me a little resistance. I hope that's plenty of slack. I kind of hoped to bring that farther up, but it didn't want to let me, and maybe that's just fine that it didn't. So I'll just stop right there, and we'll see if we have enough slack to do what we want. Then I need to run the throttle cable here right down Spring Street. And this might get a little bit fidgety, that I have to kind of squish this spring, and I'm at a little distance here, but I'm going to have to kind of really give this a good hard squish like that, and then I have to grab the needle part and kind of get that through this this slot, and I did it just like that. And let me there, I kind of, you guys see what I did there? I ran the spring, I ran it right through the center of the spring and brought it through that notch, and it kind of sits there kind of a little bit goofy, but it is on there. Now I'll take out protective tissue 1.0, and I'll move on to the next step, which is going to be aligning this as it's supposed to be with this slot on the, so this slot's going to come down to go over that idle screw here, and that will make the orientation correct. And I'll kind of look down while I'm doing this and see if I can get it to shove in, and I'm getting a little resistance. There it goes, and now you can see it going in there. I apologize for the angle. I'm kind of sitting down here. Well, I'm completely sitting down. I'm not kind of sitting down. But let me get Kickstarter out of the way here. And I'm just going to screw this in, just like this, by hand. And that goes on pretty easily. And I'll just, again, hand tight. And we'll do a little, do a small test here. And you can see how it works. You can see I'm twisting the throttle here, like that. Now look inside, and you can see there, it opens it up. So it's working and functioning how it should, and that's really the most fidgety part about it. So the next part will be placing this back in here, and I guess that's fine to have that closed. You know, you don't have a great deal of room here, so you kind of have to, you do kind of have to muscle it a little bit to get these little bolt holes lined up. And I have to say, I've done simpler things than that in my life. And let's see if I can kind of just get that right on there. Get on there. So there that is. I'm not sure how good that camera work was, but it did get on there. And then this cable here was also attached like this, and I'll deal with the placement of that later, but you can see that's how it was. And there were only these two little nuts holding it on. So I'm going to just get these started here. Just like that. Oh, Hawk, I can sense the time is close. I can sense it. It's going back together just perfectly so far. I mean, maybe not perfectly, but for me, plenty good enough. So I tell you what, I'm going to pause and get on this second nut here, and then I'll pick up again when I put the ring on there, and then I'll plug in the fuel lines and such. Okay, I did get this, get the carb bolted on both sides. Didn't give me too much trouble, but it's never as much fun as you think. So let's see if I can muscle this kind of stiff tube onto the carb here. And again, this isn't something that's just gonna slide in, but it's gonna take a little bit of fiddling to get it on. And I might pause for this part too, because it's given me a little problem, and I want to take my time with this and do it right. So I'll pause again briefly. So having a few issues here. See how that box, how it's really stiff. It doesn't want to go on. I'm actually unbolted it from the engine first. And I think I'm going to put on the air cleaner part first. And then I will bolt it to the block, because otherwise I'm really muscling it, and I don't want to shear off these bolts here. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'll pause another time and let you know how this goes. So here I am back, still struggling with this and getting it to slip on. Even after it's been unbolted from the block, this is really giving me a lot of problems. So I'm going to put a tiny amount of this cooking spray, just enough to make it wet, just around the inside of the rubber here. Now, are you supposed to do this? No, but I don't think this Crisco will injure the plastic. And again, it's going to be such a little amount, just enough to get it wet in here so I can get that slipped on. And then we'll go to the next step. But Crisco plan in full effect, and we'll be back. So back here, and Crisco plan did finally work. This really was quite a chore getting that on there, and it was a better idea to do the air part first before screwing that in. So just to be advised, this is a really hard plastic, and it doesn't really want to slide on to that. And it was easier to put it on here first and then the block second. And boy, of any part of this job, that was easily the most frustrating. It was semi-frustrating when I took it off, way more so putting it back on. So I'm going to put on a few, put on the nut on the other side, and we'll be back. Okay, got the other side done, and I keep pausing because I don't want to stop and have to do an extra take. I'm trying to do this all in one shot, so I'm just using the pause to save a lot of time and me griping. So I'm going to keep going and pause again for a moment while I kind of clean this up, and then I'll put the fuel line on. Okay, now back to the saga here, and I'm kind of glad something happened here that I wasn't expecting, and that is this little clamp. Now, you're always welcome to use a hose clamp or something like that, so you don't have to use a Hawk Clamp 1.0 if you don't want to, but there are two holes here that this screw goes through to tighten it up, but there are only threads on one side. And when I first did this, I put the screw through the side with the threads. So then the other side went through, and just with a little bit of friction, it started to kind of cinch up, but then it stopped, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, it's because it's only threaded on one side. So the way to get this little hose clamp, Hawk clamp, to bite and cinch on the carb is to put the threads on the downside and put your have this end where you're doing your screwing through just the hole itself. So just a kind of a tiny thing, but really the hardest part of this whole job was just getting this put back on. Now it's on snug. We already know, we tested the throttle, so we know the cable is on okay. This is now nice and secure. We have the vent to drop down, which is no big deal. And another thing I probably should have done before I put that on is put on a little fuel line. Now that's very simple. It just goes on a little post right on the other side here. So I won't show you that, but I'll put it on the post, and then I'll put this little clamp on it, and then I'll run that over to the petcock on the other side with the fuel, on, off, and then reserve. And then at that point, this bike will be ready to put together. I'll put its cladding back on. The cladding is standing by here. And after I do that, I'll turn the gas line on, and we'll go outside. And even if we don't, maybe I won't even do it outside. Maybe I'll just do it in here tonight. There's a lot of mosquitoes tonight, and it has been raining, so my chance to ride fixed Hawk with Carb 2.0 is kind of out of the question anyway for tonight. So maybe I'll just run it in the garage a little bit just to see if it works. And I'm optimistic. So let me connect those fuel lines, and we'll be back. Okay, now actually that part was a lot simpler than I thought, and I did get these clips, the fuel clips, and I guess can't really show you the little line clips that are on the post. I got them to work pretty nicely, and that wasn't a big deal. So really the carb is now completely on. I have the vent going kind of threading down in there. I have the fuel line in. The airbox is on. This is on correctly. This is bolted nicely to the motor, and I have the throttle on. So really an easy DIY job, and remember, I don't know what I'm doing here, and you know, if I can do it, really, gosh, anyone should be able to do this. And then lastly, previous episode I talked about the Airbox Mod. I popped out this little fin. This is kind of separated right here by a line, and I popped out that little fin on each side and kind of doubled the air going into that box. So I'm going to put on the cladding. I'm going to pause again so I can put on the cladding in the seat, move some of the tools, and I'm going to see if we can bring the Hawk to life with a new carb. We'll be right back. And just like that, we're back. And the Hawk is, I think, ready for action. So let's go around and we'll fire this up. First we'll go ahead and turn on the fuel, which I've done. And I haven't put on the choke or anything, but we'll just see what happens. Now, it doesn't surprise me that this might not be working as there's no fuel in the bowl. So I'll go ahead and put the choke on. Oh, there it was. We're close. Okay, I'm going to turn the choke off. And there it is. The Hawk has come to life. There it is. We have successfully made a repair. We'll just give it a little moment here. We're running it indoors, and you don't want to be running a bike inside. But we'll lay off of it here and see if it kills. I get the impression that it's going to if I let my hand off the throttle here. Yeah, and it did. But undoubtedly it worked. And let's check for leaks. And looking in here where I would expect to see a leak, I don't. Things look all dry in here. And again, here's the idle screw, so we can change the idle. But undoubtedly, this carb repair worked. And the idea that old Hawk 1.0 carb, Shangwei version PZ30 15G17 now can take an esteemed place in the Hawk Museum section of the Expo Center, and we couldn't be happier. Now, you know, I don't feel like I've lost a carb, is gained an artifact. And now the Hawk works. It looks like it's going to work fine. You know, we'll fiddle with the idle and maybe change a couple things, or fine tune it a little bit. But the throttle worked. The carb is actually working well, so the fuel is getting through the jets. And to be honest, I'm kind of surprised it all worked as easy as it is, even with how difficult getting old Airbox on there, and had to resort to good old Crisco just a little bit, just to get that wet so it would slip on. But was that ever a pain? But Hawk, I'll get you cleaned up now. You're now ready for prime time. Can't wait to get back out on the bike. I'll try to get out for another ride tomorrow. But there you go. Took me a couple days to get the car, but once I did, putting it in was a snap. Putting in the new jet, no problem at all. Just four screws here, popped off of the bowl. There was the main jet. Put a adjustable wrench underneath it and a screwdriver on top. Main jet comes out, 110 jet goes in, 4 screws back in. You're ready to install. And you saw the entire installation process, really, albeit broken up due to my hijinks with a couple of things, but nothing to be scared of. And again, I can't tell you how happy I am to have this trophy bringing back to the museum. I kind of feel like Indiana Jones. You know, when you go up to that altar there, and there's the head, and if you've ever looked close, it's actually a woman giving birth to a baby. There's a small golden baby between her legs, a head. You can get a close look at that, but I kind of feel like it's the same way, where this is sitting on the altar, and I have to grab it, so I swap in this carb like that, to swap it in, take this out, and the Hulk is none the wiser. So, and then the building doesn't fall apart, and just like in the movie, you know, I can bring the idol back to a museum, even though Belloc ended up taking the idol from Indiana Jones in that first movie, and you know, much to his chagrin. So we'll leave it there. Can't wait to ride new Carb Hulk, and we'll see you guys down the road.